So we're now recording now, and my name is Carol Wilmot, and I'm with Resource Materials and Technology Center for the Deaf and Hard of Hearing. I'll be monitoring the room today along with some of my other partners in crime from RMTC. This 1-hour webinar is titled Keep Moving Forward, Test-Taking Strategies for Improving ACT Scores in English and Writing. And I'm joined today by Dunn from NTID NTID Resource STEM Center. She's the outreach specialist for English and literacy, and we are thankful that she's here to present for us today. And just wanted to let you know, and she'll probably talk about this too, that she can actually come to your district and visit and do this presentation in a longer form, or actually work directly with your students on improving their scores. After the presentation, after she does her presentation, she will be taking questions. Just to let you know a little bit about the Zoom environment before we begin, today's webinar is being recorded, as I said at the beginning, and captions are being provided. To see the captions, you do have to click on the button in the Zoom menu on the bottom of your screen. We do want to thank Ann Armstrong from Alternative Communication Services for providing our captions today. We want to make sure that everybody can contribute to the conversation, so even though your mic is muted, we want to hear your questions, comments, and thoughts and interact with others in the room. So if you don't see the chat panel now, you can click on the chat panel button in the Zoom menu and select to either talk with specific attendees or to talk to everyone. I will be monitoring the chat today and dropping links as we go throughout the presentation. We mentioned it in our email notifications that this webinar is being recorded, and it will be archived on the RMTC-DHH TA Live webpage. So you can go back and re-watch this webinar or share it with anyone who might have missed it. Also there, you will be able to access a link to get a certificate of attendance after you fill out a couple of questions. So with all that business being done, I'm going to turn over the mic to Lynn Dunn. So thank you very much, Lynn, for being here and doing this presentation.
Okay, thank you so much for having me. I'm kind of new to this format, so if you have questions, I guess Kara will interject them. It's very informal. This is for you, hopefully to help your students improve on their ACT scores in English and writing. And I also have some things on reading. This is a very short version of the presentation. So if I start, I try to sometimes get too much information in, so if I start going too quickly, just stop me. Basically, for your classroom, there are 2 books that I recommend. The first one is 10 Steps to Building College Reading Skills. This is for the reading part of the ACT. And it's an excellent book. You can take the ideas from the book. It says for college reading, but you can take the ideas and even gear them down as low as elementary level. But it's an excellent tool for teaching main ideas and supporting details, as well as context, clues, and inference. I highly recommend this book. The second one for ACT is the official ACT prep guide. Now, when you go to Books A Million or Barnes & Noble or online, there will be several options for you, but several of them do not follow the practice test, the official practice test format. Some of them don't even set up the questions like the students will see them on the actual test. So you have to be really careful about which book you pick, but it's usually read, and it's called the official ACT. And someone asked me, you can get the new one every year, but this one is the latest one I have, and there were some differences I found in it. So if you can get the 2020, that's fine as well. Just whatever works for you. And I did want to emphasize the writing portion of the ACT test does not influence your student's composite score at all. When I first heard that, when I went to a training, I said, "Are you sure?" And she said, "Yeah, I called ACT because I really did not believe her." But the writing part does not influence the composite. Some schools require the writing, but it does not influence the composite score. So I just wanted to make sure you're all aware of that. There are 5 parts to the ACT training. Basically, we will only get to the first 2. We'll go over the 7 basic strategies and the list that must be memorized to help your students be successful on the test. The grammatical structures, what I mean by that is on the ACT, I will give you an example. On the ACT, okay, like there are probably around 18 subject-verb agreement rules in English. The ACT will only cover 2 of them. And there's certain grammatical rules. If you know about 4 basic comma rules, you're good for the ACT. That's what I mean by that. That's what the grammatical structure is. Only certain things that the ACT focuses on. Vocabulary, for years I used to worry about teaching all this vocabulary for reading and so forth, but basically vocabulary you need to teach or the vocabulary the students will see in the questions. So when they see the questions, they don't freak out because they don't know what they're supposed to be doing. And practice test. If you get nothing else from this webinar, you need to have your students do several practice tests and go over them with them because that helps them more than anything. I think Franklin D. Roosevelt said the greatest thing and the greatest fear is fear itself. But once the students get accustomed to the test and how it's laid out, it really helps them quite a bit. So ACT English, 5 essays, 5 passages, and each essay has about 15 questions, 75 questions total. Questions on the ACT, there will be 25 to 30% of the answers on the ACT will be no change. Then sentence structure comma rules, there are about 18 questions related to that. Redundancy, keep or omit, there are about 8 questions. The strategies I'm dealing with, keep it simple, they're 10 to 12. The who verb, what happened, is basically be able to tell a basic sentence. Is subject verb, and then what comes after that. 2 or 3, informal language 2. So if you go over all the grammatical structures and the strategies that I will go with you today, your students will know how to answer 60 out of 75 of the questions on the test. The 15 I don't cover are the longer ones that say, if so-and-so is true, should this part be omitted or not? And those kind of questions are the questions they really have to be able to read the passage to get. And they're usually the last 2 or 3 questions at the end of each passage. These are the strategies we'll go through today. And we'll go ahead and start. The first one is no change. As I said, there'll be 18 to 20 questions that the answer will be no change. And basically, ACT tries to confuse or fool your students. Because for several times, if you have 2 questions, like question number 18, the answer would be no change. Then question number 19, the answer will be no change. Well, some students will sit and think, oh no, I thought that was the right answer, but they wouldn't have 2 no changes right in a row. There are several times on the ACT that the answer no change, you have it consecutively 2 times in a row. So tell your students that's what happens. Now, and on one test, a recent practice test I just did, out of the first 7 questions, 3 of the answers, number 2, 5, and 7, all 3 of these were no change. And again, it's kind of a mental thing, trying to get your students to second guess themselves because, oh, that wouldn't be that many no changes together, but they are. So I'm not exactly sure if that's a strategy or not, but tell them there's several no changes, and many times they're very close together or consecutively 2 questions together, so don't doubt themselves. The second strategy, which there are usually 10 to 12 questions related to this in the ACT, is keep it simple. And what that means is, if I will show you examples, but if you have 4 questions and in all 4 questions you have the same words or the same group of words, that means you pick the shortest answer. That's all there is to it. And these are numbers that all the questions on the test are keep it simple strategy on one particular ACT test. Like the example on there, however, my grandpa, additionally grandpa, conversely grandpa, grandpa. The answer is grandpa. You have the word grandpa in all 4 choices. They want you to pick the shortest answer. Basically, ACT is saying a good sentence is concise, clear, concise, and simple. A lot of students like to think all this flowery language is what they want. They do not. They just want it short and simple. Another question, these questions come from actual ACT test. Another question on this test is number 60. Your 4 choices were like, just as like, such as. Like's the answer. You pick the shortest. I'm going to put 4 choices up here. So what would be the answer? You have associated, connected, and associated in all of them. Associated is the answer. And these are from actual ACT tests is where I got these examples. These are everything, every question and every sample I give you was from an actual ACT test. Again, you have the same words. You have the same word in all 4 choices. The answer is bulk. You have the word process in all 4 choices. The answer is process. The same words, one's a different tense, but the answer is wearing. And the answer I know you can guess by now is popular for. But that's one strategy. If you have the same word in all 4 choices, pick the shortest. Now, if 2 of your answers are of the same length, if you have answer choices and 2 of them of the same length, you're going to look for 2 things. You're either going to look for a subject-verb agreement rule or correct verb tense. The first one is an example of correct verb tense. The subject of the sentence is sound, and you have 2. You say pick the shortest where you have makes and makes. Which one is it? Well, sound, there's no S on the verb there, so it has to be makes is the answer. Then in the second example, you have fireflies flashing and fireflies flashed. They're the same length, so which do? You look back in the verb. You have ED on indicated, you have ED on threatened, so you pick ED. So you're matching verb tense, or if they're the answers are the same length, you're going to look for subject-verb agreement rules or verb tense rule. I haven't done this very often, but if there are any questions along the way, I'm open to answering questions if that's a possibility for this format. Same thing again. You have your questions. You have bumps and bump are the same length. You have an S on the verb here, so the answer has to be bump. Again, you have S on the verb here, so forms and form are the same length. So you have to pick form with no S for the subject-verb agreement rule. Okay, that is the first strategy of keep it simple. You have the same 4 words in your answer choice. You pick the shortest unless they're the same length. Look for subject-verb agreement rules or verb tense rules. Redundancy is another one. Again, it's just like keeping the sentence simple. When you have words in the passage that say the same thing, you have to choose whether to delete or omit one of them. And so that's a vocabulary where you have to teach your deaf, hard of hearing students. Sometimes they do not know the meaning of delete or omit, so that's a vocabulary you would have to teach them. But when you have, if you have decade and 10 in the same sentence, you would delete one. Business and work in the same sentence, they mean the same, so you delete it. Same as in San Antonio, Texas, where would be underlined, and you would have to choose whether to delete or omit it, so you would delete it because it already tells you where in San Antonio. These are examples for actual tests. Tara began to calculate annual tables. Well, annual and yearly mean the same thing, so you would delete the underlined portion. And then the second example, acquiesced, means gave in. Now, sometimes our deaf and hard of hearing students may not know that vocabulary, so sometimes this rule doesn't help them out as much as others, but if they know that annual and yearly mean the same thing, they will know to delete. Say over many weeks as time goes by, that's maybe one they may get, because many weeks in time, they may figure you don't need both if they've been taught this strategy. So the answer would be to delete. And again, you have business trip in connection with her work, so you would delete in connection with her work, because business trip and work mean the same thing. So you omit would be your answer. Over 3 decades, more than 30 years means the same thing, so you omit. You omit the more than 30 years. Over 3 decades The results indicate a problem to postpone. Postpone, delay mean the same thing, so you omit or delete delay. Okay, sometimes redundancy and keep it simple are based on the same principle. You will pick the shortest. So if this was your question and you had to pick from no change or the other two, of course, you would pick the shortest. So it would be after waiting a while. That would be your answer, after waiting a while. Okay, here's the underlined portion. Here are your choices. You would pick the shortest. This would be underlined. Your choice would be to keep it or pick one that, here again, you would pick the shortest, optimistic. Too frigid and cold, you wouldn't think it, but cold is the answer. So many times it's the same thing. You have frigid and cold. You have the same 4 words. You have the same words in all 4 choices, so you pick the shortest. That's kind of keep it simple and redundancy together. I will say I was a bit disappointed because for years you only had these choices. You would have the 4 same words and the choices, you would pick the shortest. Now in the red book I just showed you, one of the tests, now you will have these, you'll have these 3 choices, and then you will also have delete or omit. So that kind of brings in another aspect that they would need to understand the meaning of the sentence. But they can still, I would still say go with the shortest answer, because even though they say omit or delete, when it's this short, this kind of situation, the shortest answer is the correct one. The next strategy is odd man out, which means you're going to pick the one that's different. They're going to be 3 wrong and 1 right, or 3 right and 1 wrong. The thing about this one that is so easy is when you start looking through it, the basic rule is if you have 4 choices, and again, all these are questions from actual ACT tests. These are your 4 choices. If you have 4 choices and 3 of them have some sort of punctuation and 1 does not, you want to pick the one that doesn't have any punctuation. And they're about at least 8 to 10 questions and this deals with punctuation rules, which this is the case. Again, these are actual answers from an ACT test. 3 have punctuation, 1 does not. You pick the one with no punctuation. Same thing on the second example. You have 3 choices, 4 choices, 1 has no punctuation. You pick that one. Of course, it's helpful if they know their comma rules, but if they don't, or if they're not sure of them, if you have 3 choices like this, number 1, you should know the comma in the middle would probably be wrong. But the bottom line is odd man out is if you have 4 choices, 3 have punctuation, 1 does not, pick the one with no punctuation. And here's some more examples from actual tests. And the yellow is the one with the answer. The answer is the one with no punctuation. And that's a basic odd man out strategy with punctuation. The other odd man out strategy has to do with synonyms or nuances of meanings of the words. Again, I'm just emphasizing these are actual answers from actual tests. Okay, your 4 choices were contract, reduce, decrease, compress. Well, the answer is contract because the other 3 answers, you reduce it and they all stay the same size. When you contract, you get larger and smaller. So that's the one that's different. And if you're a signer, across, among, over, and on, that is a 1 movement sign. Among, is a different sign, and among, across, over, and on, you only need 1 object to use that word. Among, you have to have more than 1 object for something to be among something. So that's the difference. So there are two odd man out strategies. One has to do with punctuation. Basically, you have three with punctuation. Pick the one with no punctuation. It's going to be nuances of meaning in words. And they're going to be very close in meaning. You're going to have to figure out by one is different, and which may be harder for our deaf and hard of hearing students, but that's the other odd man out. The next strategy is slang or informal language. Basically, hearing students, it's easier because they'll know, makes lots of people really like it. You know, they know that's kind of slangy. But if your students see a contraction in a sentence and they don't know what else to look for, formal language and formal writing should never have contractions. And that's about the best. There are only about 2 questions on the test related to that, but that is one thing you can teach them, that you do not use contractions in formal writing. The other one, another strategy, and there are probably only 2 questions on the test with this, are, I called it what verb, who verb, what to do, just because the way you sign it and the way it went with class. But at the end of each passage, you're going to have about 3 very wordy questions. And this is one of them. And they'll say, pick which would be the best choice. Well, if you have one of these long wordy questions and your students have trouble reading, all you have to do is pick the sentence where the subject is in the beginning, where the subject comes closest to the beginning of the sentence. The answer in this one is the last one. Grandpa says, because that's who, verb, what happened. And in all those wordy sentences, that's what you try to get your students to look for. Okay, look for the sentence that has the subject first and the verb second, or the subject and verb closest to the beginning of the sentence. And there are probably 2, or there are definitely 2 on the ACT test like this, and possibly 3. Depends on the test. Another example of this, the best sentence is always subject, verb, what happened, where the subject is closer to the beginning of the sentence. So what would be the answer if these were your 4 choices? The answer would be the third one, scientists Kenneth and Hannah, because you have subject and then you have verb. Sometimes they'll have like yesterday and have the subject a word away from the beginning. But basically, if your students are not sure what else to look for, tell them to look for the sentence where the subject and the verb are closest to the sentence and pick that for your answer. So that's your who, verb, what did, do strategy. Okay, those are your basic strategies. You have your keep it simple. You have 4 of the same words in a sentence, pick the shortest. Your redundancy, delete or omit. You don't need to say things the same way twice. Sometimes redundancy and keep it simple are the same. You're going to look for the shortest. If 2 answers, you have 4 words in a sentence, 2 answers have the same length, you're going to look for subject-verb agreement rule or verb tense rule to pick the answer. Odd man out, you pick the sentence that is different, and it usually deals with 3 will have punctuation, 1 will not, or you're going to have 4 words dealing with different meanings, and you have to pick the one whose meaning is different. Slang and formal language, contractions are not formal language, and who, verb, what to do. Pick the sentence where the subject comes closest, the subject and verb are together and come closest to the beginning of the sentence. For the ACT, there are certain things your students need to memorize that go with the grammatical structures that they need to know for the test. The first thing they need to memorize is verb to be, then prepositions, your coordinating conjunctions, your subordinating conjunctions, conjunctive adverbs, and pronouns. Now, pronouns, there's a lot to teach on pronouns, but they basically, your students need to know the difference between a subject pronouns and objective pronouns, and I'll go over what possessives, what they need to look out for with possessive pronouns. Okay, verb to be, simple.
Hey, Lynn, I'm just going to interrupt real quick.
Sure.
This particular section definitely helps with our ACT test, but I was also just reviewing the English Language Arts Florida Standard Assessments passages that we do, and we have actual sections where the students have to correct these grammatical mistakes. So this will actually also help them if they're taking the FSA ELA assessment on the grammar portions. That's really important for them to also make that connection in addition to the ACT.
Good. Please interrupt me anytime. I feel kind of strange. I feel like I'm talking to myself here. Okay. So this is a list of prepositions your students must memorize, and they need to memorize this for comma rules, which I hope is included in this. But I have included in the PowerPoint. You can just print this off from the PowerPoint and get your students to memorize it. And all the things I'm telling you, you need your students to memorize. My students have memorized it. And they freaked out when they saw 42, but I just took them column, all the A's, all the B's, and kept adding to it. And they did fine. And they really did it very quickly. They were very amazed and they were very proud of themselves. But they really need to know these basic prepositions and the meaning. You know, it's sometimes we assume our kids might know the meanings to some of these, but they didn't. So this helps in reading comprehension as well. And most of you seasoned teachers are already familiar with FANBOYS, but these are the coordinating conjunctions the students need to memorize. And and this goes along with your odd man out punctuation, but they also need, in the ACT, they will have a word underlined, and they also have to know which other word to pick that means the same. So they also need to know the meanings of these words. Like a lot of deaf, when they sign nor, they just sign not. They really don't understand that it means you have two choices, but you don't want either one, which is a form of negative, but it's not. It doesn't replace not, just bottom line. And or you have two choices and you want one choice. Yet, now you know most of our deaf students are going to sign yet like not yet. But when you have yet in the middle of a sentence, it means the same as but. It doesn't mean, it's not a time word. So they kind of need to be aware of that, which will help in their comprehension and grammar too, hopefully.
Hey, Lynn, I have a question from a panelist. Can you explain what you mean by memorize? What are they memorizing for?
They're memorizing FANBOYS, because if they see for, and, nor, but, or, yet, so in the middle of a sentence, and the next word after FANBOYS is a noun or a who or what, you have to have a comma in front of it. If they see these words in the middle of a sentence and there's a verb right after it, there's no comma. So they have to memorize this for one of the comma rules that's necessary in most grammar tests and on the ACT. Does that clarify it?
And FANBOY is the...
FANBOYS is just a way for kids to memorize your coordinating conjunctions. For, and, nor, yet, but, or, yet, so.
So it's just the acronym, a fun...
it's just an acronym. It's just, okay, memorize.
Mnemonic, sorry.
Yeah. Yeah, instead of memorizing, and they have a test. I give them tests all the time where they have a test with a blank sheet of paper where they have to list a verb to be, have to list 42 prepositions, have to list the coordinating conjunctions. And I call them coordinating conjunctions, but at the beginning, the FANBOYS really help my students learn them.
Okay, thank you.
Then subordinating conjunctions. Now, I haven't come up with an acronym for this one. If y'all come up with one, please share it. I just have to call them subordinating conjunctions, and they have to these are the basic ones they need. And I have because and although in yellow, because they will definitely see because and although on the ACT. It is on every ACT test. And the basic rule for the subordinating conjunctions is if these words begin the sentence, you're going to have a comma. If the words are in the middle of the sentence, there is no comma. That's why on one of the answers you had with when, one of the answers had a comma in front of when and it was in the middle of the sentence. So if you know this rule, you would have known that was not the right answer. But the one thing on ACT will put a comma in front of because in the middle of a sentence. And that is not correct. There's usually one of those on every test. They've started adding although more often, but your students will definitely see probably when, because, and although on the ACT. But if they memorize these words and know, okay, if they begin the sentence, comma, if they in the middle, they are not. And when I do my PowerPoints, I have them color-coded. Now there's some, I never had issues in my class, I guess because I had a small room. You have to watch for colorblind students that you do the right colors. But if they see that while at the beginning, comma, although at the beginning of a sentence, you're going to have a comma. Oh, I forgot to do color code since. Since is another one, comma. If the words are in the middle of the sentence, there is no comma. And there you have your because. There's not a comma in front of because in this situation. And that's what they need to know for the ACT, because they will put that in there. They're seeming to use although more than because these days, but that is also in there. But that's why they have to memorize them, because if they memorize these, then these clues are more visual, that if they memorize these words and then they see them on the sentence, they'll know what to look for. Beginning, comma. Middle, no comma. And that seems to help my students quite a bit. I'm going to keep going unless there are questions. But that's why they have to memorize them. So when they see these words, they'll be tuned into the comma rule. Okay, these are conjunctive adverbs. And conjunctive adverbs, I just call them big funky words for fanboys. And basically, it's the same rule, but they need to memorize these. These conjunctive adverbs are on the ACT also for meaning. So the basic, I call them big funky words, mean the same thing as fanboys. Therefore, as a result, thus means so. These three mean but, or, and. Now, they definitely need to memorize the conjunctive. They need to memorize these based on their meaning, because on the ACT, they'll have a question, and they will have but, like buts in the sentence, and they'll have but underlined, and they'll have which of these words is best here to replace it. And they'll have therefore, however, moreover, or otherwise. They'll have these other words, but they have to know that however means but. Or they might have therefore, and the student needs to know that it means the same as so. But it's very important that they memorize these words, because these are definitely on the, most of the words on the ACT, you'll see therefore, however, and I think it's furthermore. Consequently, too. You don't see thus, but who knows, they might add it. But therefore, however, and moreover, they throw moreover in there too. But I just teach my kids, these big funky words mean the same as fanboys. Also, and this is one of the tests I give them, just another way to put it. This is one word that means. And there are other conjunctive adverbs, but these are the ones that are definitely on the ACT and most commonly used. And I don't have it here, but see, this is the same rule. These are the same rule as why you have to memorize them. Because if you see these big funky words in the middle of a sentence, if there's a who or what after them, you have to have semicolon, comma. If there's a verb after them, you just have comma, comma. So they basically mean the same word, mean as fanboys, and they also have the basic comma rule as fanboys with them. But they have to memorize those because they will see them on the ACT. Another thing they need to memorize are these pronouns, your nominative pronouns. Basically, they need to know the objective pronouns. If you see the PowerPoint, the the me, him, her, us, and them. Basically, on the ACT, they started adding more antecedent agreement rules, but basically on the ACT, there are two things you need to know about pronouns. You need to know that if you see me, him, or them in the beginning of a sentence, it's wrong. Your objective pronouns cannot begin a sentence. That's one of the main pronoun rules they need to know. And also, if you have like Frank and I, it can't be I and Frank. But the main thing, ACT wants you to know that you cannot have an objective pronoun in the beginning of a sentence. And I don't have the slide in here, I can't believe it. But also on pronouns, on the ACT, they will put OUR''S as a choice. They need to know that a pronoun does not have an apostrophe. If it's ours with an apostrophe, it's wrong. That's not even a word. And I might need to add that to you and see. I guess I was worried about time. I was afraid I wouldn't get to cover that. But basically, the only pronoun rule you need to know at this point is that objective pronouns do not begin a sentence. The last test I saw, they're adding some more antecedent things, like you need to know their means plural and his means one, but there was only one question like that. Their main focus is objective pronouns do not begin a sentence. And that is the main thing for your English. Do I have any questions? Because I was going to go over some basic reading things as well. Are there any questions on English you want me to cover? And granted, this is about as summarized as I can get. The trainings last much longer because he's going to more depth. But I will head on to reading because these are some simple things for reading as well. ACT reading, if you've got to get a book, again, this is the book to get. It is great for giving you ideas about main idea and supporting details. The only strategy you really need for reading is process of elimination. On the reading test, you're going to have 4 answers, and basically, unless you read it very carefully, all 4 answers could be correct, but there's only one answer that's completely correct. And since our students have trouble reading, this is the harder test for them, in my opinion. You can pull up their English scores based on the strategies a whole lot easier than the reading, but these are some things that will help the reading. Your reading part, ACT has 4 passages. There's fiction, social science, humanities, and natural science. And each passage has 10 questions. If your students prefer to read fiction, they need to read passages 1 and 3 first because they're more comfortable. They'll have a greater chance of answering the correct questions. If your students prefer nonfiction, they should read passages 2 and 4 first. And sometimes there's debate about this, but I always suggest read the questions first because the questions will give you some idea of what the passage may be about. And also, if you have 10 questions, they're going to be at least 2 to 4 of the questions that will tell you exactly where to find the answer. So I recommend to my students, okay, it says in question number 20 says in line 64, the term. So I have my students go back and find line 64 in the passage and put number 20 beside it so they will know the answer to question 20 is going to be in line 64. But usually there are about 2 to 4 questions in every passage where they tell you exactly where to find the answer. So I recommend that strategy for them as well. The basic skill you need for ACT is to be able to find the main idea, the difference between main idea and supporting details. And main idea, theme, conclusion, summary, ACT and any standard will switch up the words, but all 3 of those words mean you're looking for the general. If you have a specific detail in a sentence, that's not going to be the main idea, theme, or conclusion, or summary. Those 4 words mean you're looking for the general idea of the passage. And that's kind of difficult was difficult for my students to get, but the book I showed you gave you some great ideas. This is one of the ideas from the book. The tables and the main idea is the top of the table, the supporting details are the legs. And here's examples of it. I wish I could tell you I came up with this idea myself, but I didn't. And from the college material, I came up with a PowerPoint. I started very simple. Okay, summer, winter, spring, fall. Those are the supporting details. The general would be seasons. This group, these are the supporting details. The general, the theme, the conclusion, the summary would be candy. And I came up with several like this, but I got the idea from that book and I just broke it down. So I highly recommend the book. You're going to have to identify a point of view and different types of writing. The 4 types of writing are persuasive, explanatory, descriptive, and narrative. And I started looking through it. If your kids have trouble reading and they're supposed to describe what kind of paragraph it is, go back to you're teaching your fact and opinion. And it's usually in the first or the last paragraph. If they see opinion words like think, ought, should, believe, that means it's persuasive, even if they can't read the passage. And it's for hearing kids too, because hearing kids they have a time limit. Deaf kids have the extended time. This is good for hearing kids too, because if they don't have time to read it all, if you see one of these words in the passage, it's going to be persuasive. If it's explanatory, they're going to see words like first, then, or words such as how or why. So if you can teach them to clue into certain words to determine which kind of writing it is, it helps them. Descriptive, if they read that passage and they're adjectives, lots and lots of adjectives, or detail, you know it's going to be descriptive. Narrative, a narrative paragraph is usually about an event or something that happens in someone's life, so look for past tense verbs. Your explanatory paragraph will probably be more present tense. Or tell them if it reads like a story, if it tells about something that's happened in somebody's life, it's going to be narrative. So there's some clues for them to pick out what kind of writing it is. And again, vocabulary that you teach. For years, I used to go through and teach all this vocabulary, but basically you just need to make sure the students know the vocabulary that are in the question, some of the key question words, so they'll know what they're looking for. Like accept, if you see the word accept, it means pick the answer that's wrong. Describe means you want an answer that has a lot of detailed information, adjectives, or facts. And these other words. This is just an example of some, and that will help you on your state test too, because I don't know your state test, but if you go through the questions on the test, you can teach them what to look for. Even if they can't read the whole question, if they see the word accept, they'll know they're looking for a wrong answer. Or describe, they'll know they're looking for details. And that is my strategies in a very, very, very summarized form. I can come to your school and I can provide ACT training free for your students or teachers. I do it a lot of times with the students and the teachers there, so because if I'm talking about something, the teacher will say, oh, you remember we covered that. For the best results, it's nice to have a 2-day time slot. And I know with high schools in the mainstream that's difficult to do, but if we could have 3 to 4 hours a day for 2 days, it would make a huge difference. Or either if we could do it, we could do it on weekends in a weekend format. I know that wouldn't be a student's idea of a fun weekend, but those are, and I can come, all my transportation and everything's paid for. All you have to do is extend the invitation. And I guess we could do it by virtual learning like webinars, but that's one option. I also offer the following trainings with test-taking strategies. That begins with elementary. Some of the basic things that are in state tests. It's never too early to start. And also Florida uses the IXL. And I'm not sure if you know, but IXL and ACT are aligned. And I have the alignments, which tells you exactly which goal and leads to an ACT skill. I have them for reading, English, and math, and some of the strategy goals start as early as 3rd grade in English. You start on your 3rd grade level in English skills, and I think math is 4th.
Lynn, this is Kara. Are you guys still offering accounts for IXL?
We are in the process of it's contract time and end of the fiscal year, so we're in the process of going through schools to see if you don't use it, let us know, because yes, we had to renegotiate the contract, so that's going to slow us up a bit, but yes.
And I had another question. Do you only provide for students who are DHH? Can other nationalities?
Yes, our funding is federal funds. We are only funded for deaf and hard of hearing.
And I know a lot of students don't want to give up their Saturdays, but when students can use the ACT score in the state of Florida as a substitute or use the concordant score to replace the FSA 10th grade, some of those students might feel it's worth their time on a Saturday to come get this training, just to put it out there.
Well, I'm telling you, I went to Gallaudet and worked with 3 seniors who had graduated and could not get in Gallaudet because their English and reading score, their English score was not high enough. And I only had 2 days with them, with the 3 and 4, and we did some practice tests, and we went over these exact same strategies. One student went from an 8 to a 14, the other went from a 10 to a 14, so they got in. So, I mean, it's work, and one reason it works, when the students are motivated, it helps. And I gave them 2 practice tests during that short time. It's very, even if you pay Kaplan for a test, which I paid for my students, they had 8 sessions. 2 of the sessions were doing the practice test. It's very important to show the kids the practice test and go over it with them.
And I know I was talking to the vocational rehab counselor from Alabama that they sponsor a week-long ACT camp every year in Alabama at the University of Auburn.
Uh-huh.
And that the kids come to the camp all week long, and then on Saturday they all go take the ACT test together.
Yes, the best time for me, if I was going to come do the training at your school, the best time for me to come would be the closest to your ACT date as possible. Because then the strategies, because those students at Gallaudet, I taught them, I was with them Thursday and Friday, and they took the ACT test on Saturday morning. So all those strategies were fresh on their minds, and honey, they nailed it evidently.
Awesome, thank you.
Another training we can do are all the services we offer, and also for you out there, y'all sure the robotics programs we offer, but we also offer if you go on, I'll go on that later. Anyway, another set of trainings I do are related to STEM resources, what's out there, and I do a training with the little Dash robots and how to incorporate English literacy activities with the Dash, which is really fun because, I mean, some English teachers, they get it's going to say you've got to incorporate STEM, and you're like, well, how? Well, the Dash robot is a wonderful way to do it. Then STEM and literacy, I have gone through, there are some books. If you can go to the National Science Teachers Association, the NSTA website, they have wonderful resources about doing literacy, with combining STEM activities with literacy. But those are books they have chosen. My STEM and literacy, I've been teaching lit for a long time, so I have gone through books that most schools are on required reading lists, like Frankenstein, The Prince and the Pauper, The Country Mouse, and City Mouse, and take those books and show you how to incorporate STEM activities with those books. Like Frankenstein would be to create an electric circuit, or build a robotic hand, or use a 3D printer to create a brain, because it deals with the brain. Those are just some STEM ideas that would go with Frankenstein. But I have a whole presentation on that. And then STEM objectives and language arts, how to correlate them. Then am I teaching English to deaf, where to start, strategies for teaching, writing. I have another PowerPoint with writing activities for developing writing skills, how to take them step from a simple sentence to a paragraph to an informative essay to a research paper. That's the writing skills, where you take it step by step by step with your students. And Deaf Kids Code is another thing we offer, and I have put links up there so you can look more at what Deaf Kids Code is. And also, if you go to the EdWebNet, Deaf Kids Code came to the Alabama School for the Deaf, and there's a 45 webinar showing the Dash and some of the literacy activities and other activities we came up using the Dash in that webinar, and you have the links there to look at that. But if you would like Deaf Kids Code to come to your school, the NRSC Center will provide, that is a free thing we provide as well. We will pay for Shireen and one of our members to go to your school, and she can spend a half a day doing a workshop. She likes to have 10 students per group. She can work with 10 students in the morning, then 2 students in the afternoon. And she has centers set up where, like, one would be building a circuit, one would be programming the Dash, another would be doing more like a marketing activity. It depends on, she works with middle school and high school students. But we also provide Deaf Kids Code for you free as well. And I think if you would like to get in with Deaf Kids Code, you may contact me for any of the things I have mentioned. And I think that is about it. But again, I want to reiterate, this is just the icing on the cake as far as how much detail we go into the training. These are just the basic strategies and things you can use. There's a whole lot more to it, but this can give you a good start. And you may please call me or text me or call me on the VP if you have specific questions about certain things in the ACT.
Thank you so much, Lynn. This was great information. And I know I like what you talked about doing the dash with English. I think a lot of times we ask our students to write and they get stuck on what to write because they do the same thing at home every day. So giving them a new experience gives them something more engaging to write about and makes them more willing to read. So I personally love STEM and bringing it into the ELA class. And so if they get that workshop from you, they get the dash robot, right?
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, we give the dash robots free as well. So you could have the dash robot boats in your class. If you go to the web, I don't know if it's on the webinar. No, that was not. See, I went to Indianapolis and worked with Shireen, who founded Deaf Kids Code, and we were coming up with English activities to do. And one was like, you have your kids write a simple paragraph. My friend is sick. I have not seen my friend in a long time, so I want to go to the library to see her. So they kind of, we did a little board. We set up a little blocks where there was a bridge and we put trees were apart and the dash robot had to go. She said, I walked through the park to go, and at the park I saw it, and then I had to go under the bridge and da-da-da. So you're incorporating prepositions, sequence of writing, and all that. And then we set it up in the dash robot. We programmed the dash robot to finally get to the library. I mean, yeah, it was fun. It's all fun.
So I apologize. At the beginning, I thought I had posted the link to the PowerPoint, but somebody on my team caught it for me. I had selected all, I selected the wrong thing. I didn't have panelists and attendees, so I was not posting the links like I should have, but all the links will be in the PowerPoint. We'll also make sure they're up on our webpage when we put the archive of TA Live. Does anyone have any questions specifically for Lynn? You can just type them in the chat and I'll read them out for you if you'd like. And while you're waiting, I also posted the link, hopefully correctly, that everybody could see for our survey for everyone that attended. You could complete that survey. It's greatly appreciated. So we have about 8 more minutes. We'll see if anybody posts any questions. But in the meantime, I do want to thank you, Lynn, for presenting today. I really appreciate it. It's some great information. I know the teachers in Florida who have told me that have had you in the classroom have raved about the presentation with the students and that it really has made a difference. And they're really appreciative of that. And we have Candace saying thank you too, Lynn. And we also want to thank CART provider Ann Armstrong from Alternative Communication Services for providing our captions today. And we do offer those captions every time we have our TA Live. Finally, I also want to thank all of our participants, our attendees today, for being a part of our day for TA Live. We do offer this every month, and we do record it, and we will post the archives on our website. We do want to connect with all our attendees through social media like Facebook, Twitter, and Pinterest, and you can sign up for our newsletter. We'd love to see your comments on social media about what you've learned with the hashtag RMTC-DHH or hashtag RMTC-DHH TA Live. And as you know, we are a Florida Department of Education, Bureau of Exceptional Education and Student Services discretionary project, and all our services we provide are provided at no cost. So to continue our work, we do need to collect that survey data to justify why our services are needed. So each of you could just please fill out that survey. We would greatly appreciate it. And I did put that in the chat. And I think that the link also comes up when you close out the Zoom room. So with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording now. Manatee County thanks you also and thought this was very beneficial. They appreciate it.